on this, it's a little steep over on this side. So just hold your handrail. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fogartyville Community Media and Arts Center. How's everyone doing today? Excellent. This is a nice crowd we have here. We're going to have to make sure, though, that we are being as excited and energetic as possible because this is all going out live on WSLR 96.5. Let's hear a round of applause for WSLR. Woo! There we go. Now we're talking. Our fantastic news director, Johannes Warner here, has a very important job today. Is this anyone's first time coming to Talk of the Town here at Fogartyville? Oh, we got some first-timers. Wonderful. Welcome to you all. A round of applause for them, too. Love it. So Johannes' important job is trying to get the applause button to work. So let's test it out, Johannes. He's got to point it right in the correct direction. There we go. Fantastic. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for coming here. We will be live on the radio, also streaming on YouTube, and this program will be podcasted on all major podcasting platforms after the show ends. So you can subscribe to Talk of the Town podcast. While you're doing that, I'd also suggest subscribing to WSLR News, our local news production here. Just want to mention a few things. We're going to be very tight on time. So 11 o'clock, we are starting the show. I have a little clock up here that Carrie looks at. She's going to have to take a look at that one. I'm not sure where our other clock is, but we'll get it for you. If everyone can make sure their phones are on silent and bring forward that energy when we get live on the air. Right now, we are 2 minutes away from starting up, so I'll mention just a couple of things we have going on here. Fogartyville is having our Songwriter Series, our monthly special series, this Monday, 6 p.m., with songwriters host Ishmael Katz, one of WSLR's own programmers, and local musicians Elaine Bolton and Carrie Cheney. So we hope you all will come out for the Songwriter Night this Monday. Also, this afternoon, we are sponsors of the Taste of Newtown, happening at the Robert L. Taylor Community Center, just a little bit north of here, off of 301. We're honoring the roots and flavors of Newtown and looking at the past, present, and future and honoring all three. That's going to be from 12 to 5 p.m., and we will also be broadcasting live. Our program director, Leon Kerber, will be live from the event, so you can hear some stuff on the radio as well. We have 1 minute to go, so I just want to make sure if anybody needs to run to the bathroom, they got to do it now. Get a drink of water at the bar. I want to recognize some folks who are helping out today. We have volunteer Bill on the bar over here. Wonderful. We've got Sherry working the door. Thank you, Sherry. All right, Mr. Damon's back on the soundboard. Thank you, Damon. Matt in the video booth, and Mr. Ariel, our Fogartyville director, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, we are still 30 seconds out, so we're going to bring the music back just for a moment. I'm going to do a countdown when we get to 5, and then we'll get going. Everybody ready? Great. All right, come on in. I'm going to bring the lights down. All right. The anticipation. It's exciting. 10 seconds away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are tuned to WSLR LP 96.5 FM in Sarasota and WBPV LP 100.1 FM in Bradenton. The opinions expressed on this show are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WSLR, its staff, or volunteers. Coming to you live from the Fogartyville Community Media and Arts Center in front of a live audience, it's an hour of discussion and analysis of the events and issues Sarasota is talking about. This is Talk of the Town. Woo!
Florida's expansion of the Schools of Hope legislation, allowing charter schools to take over underused space in public schools, has thrown schools, administrators, and parents into turmoil. Both Sarasota and Manatee counties have been put on notice that charters intend to vie to share space in a number of area schools. What strategies for keeping public school spaces public have been proposed? What's the current status of the charter applications? And how are community members coming together to fight for the preservation of our public school education system? We'll find out today on WSLR's Talk of the Town. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to see this crowd here in the studio, and thanks to those of you who are also listening on the radio and watching live on YouTube. It's wonderful to have you all with us. It's been a month since we took up this topic for the first time on our last show. We kind of were on the cutting edge there of jumping on this subject, and we don't usually repeat ourselves in this show, but there's been so much that has happened in the past month on this topic that we thought it'd be a great idea to bring it back again and catch everybody up on where things are at right now. So I'm very fortunate today to have with me today 3 people who've kind of been in the thick of this whole controversy over the Schools of Hope legislation. And I know that they can share with us a lot of what's been happening since we last got together. And first among those is a man who probably needs no introduction at this point. I remember interviewing him shortly after he accepted the position as superintendent in Sarasota County, and thinking at that time that he was stepping into a very hot seat and not realizing how hot it would become. So he's been super busy this past month, as you can imagine. We're really grateful to have him with us. Please welcome Superintendent Terry Connor. And next to him is Holly Bullard from the Florida Policy Institute. Holly is not only with FPI, she also happens to be a parent of a kindergartner at Wilkinson Elementary School, which was one of the first schools that was potentially targeted for closure due to the charter applications. Things have changed since then, but we're happy to have her with us wearing both of those hats. Welcome, Holly. And we also have with us Heather Felton. Heather is a school board member in Manatee County, and she's been keeping up to date on how our neighboring county is handling the potential threat to some of their schools. So we're happy to have her with us as well. Please welcome Heather. There's a lot of ground to cover today, and I've really encouraged all our panelists to chime in at any time because they are far more informed than I am about this subject. But I'm going to dive right in and get started with Terry because we have some catching up to do. I know that yesterday there was a vote within the school board on a new plan that Terry and many others have been working to react to this potential charter infiltration. I think it's called Reimagine Sarasota School District, is that right?
It is our future-focused strategic initiative.
Oh my goodness, okay. Clearly I need some catching up. Anyway, Terry, if you can just kind of tell us what's involved in that plan. I know you can't go into every detail, but what are we looking at now in terms of confronting this potential charter invasion?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I will tell you, you know, I've always led with the idea that when challenges are presented, you have to find the opportunities, right? Since arriving to Sarasota, we have had a multitude of challenges, right? You know, and school districts always do. And so it's become commonplace to always problem solve. That is what the job entails as a superintendent. You are a problem solver, and it continues to happen. And we have been looking at our educational landscape in more of a business model for quite some time. Education has become, for us, really about choice. Families have a lot of choice that has expanded rapidly over the last several years, and that has resulted in challenges just with the traditional way of doing work. So when you're talking about the utilization of your facilities because students may be choosing other options, obviously there are enrollment shifts that are predicated by economic challenges in a community or other, you know, building out in different parts of the county and growth that occurs. You're always dealing with those shifts all the time. And then really your programming. Because what we have to understand now in education is that the old traditional style of just providing the basics, we have to provide more than just the basics. We have to look at acceleration options for students. We have to look at career technical pathways for students and be more cutting edge to align that programming to what meets the demands of the community, right? And so when you take all that in consideration, those challenges have been talked about since the day I arrived, right? And prior to me. And so what happened recently with this new legislation is that it's created an accelerated timeline, some urgency around addressing all of that. So I said, listen, we can just focus on that problem, or we can actually solve a multitude of problems as we go through this process. And so as we have built this future focused plan, it's really about maximizing the efficiency of our resources. I mean, we have buildings, we have staff, and we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers with all of those resources that we have. It's about making sure that we're providing a product that our parents want, right? We know that there are a lot of options out there. We want to, I believe, personally, I'm a little biased, but I think we can do that, those options, and have that product be better than what some of those providers out there are offering. And so we've listened to our parents through that process, and we're developing and arranging our resources in such a way through this plan that it protects our local control of our facilities, because the impacts of new legislation actually jeopardize our local control. It maximizes fiscal responsibility, and it provides a product that our families want. And I can dive deep into that as we go through the conversation of how we're addressing those things, but that's essentially what the plan is addressing overall. Now, in terms of Schools of Hope, which we'll dive into for those who may not know that, that has created some urgency and a timeline that's a little more aggressive, because the pace of change is very hard. You know, when you're talking about massive, significant change, that can be hard for a community to absorb very fast. And so that's the challenge moving forward with this plan, of making that as smooth as possible. So.
That's great. We're going to get into some of the more details of this plan that you've come up with, but I'm going to turn to Heather for a minute. I know Holly, who has been kind of monitoring the entire state, has said Sarasota is really at the forefront of getting a jump on this. As Terry said, they've been considering this for quite some time. What about in Manatee County? How are you responding to the charter applications?
Well, our district is definitely taking this seriously. Let me first preface with, I do not speak for the board. I'm not the chair. Everything I say is my own opinion.
You have to say
I have to say that. I can put that out there. But the district is taking this very seriously. And one of the things that is impacting us in Manatee County is that we are in the process of rezoning the entire district. It was one of the first things I was told when I was elected and sworn in a year ago. So I've been on the board a year, and that was one of the first things I was told is, hey, we're going to prepare to rezone the entire district. I'm like, oh, great, this is going to be fun. And I figured that was going to be the only big challenge I was going to have this year, right? I thought, yeah, no. But we're in the middle of that, and we have gone through extensive conversations with our public. We've had public meetings, we've had maps all over the place, taken tons of comment. We're in the middle of the last comment process right now. We have presented our maps, and we're still taking comments and requests for possible changes and concerns. So one of the things that is really impacting us with this is Schools of Hope are going to be asking for space that's not going to be empty next August. There's going to be kids there because we're moving people around, and that's what happens. And also in Manatee County, we are one of the few districts in Florida that are still massively growing. We just opened 2 schools in this past fall, a K-8, and then we extended one of our elementaries to become a K-8. So we've got those 2. And then in my own district, which is some of Northwest, mostly Northeast, Manatee County, in Parish, we have 2 new schools opening this coming August. A year from now, we've got another high school opening. So there's been something in the realm of 43,000 homes approved and not yet under construction in my district. And the people keep moving in. So where are we going to put those people? when they get here. If somebody decides that, hey, we like this school up here because it's not at capacity, well, of course not. We've got all these people moving in. So these are things that we're juggling right now, and we're hoping that when we finally get our final numbers down in January after choice window closes, that we will have a better understanding of where we actually do have space. But we're also working on other things as well in terms of legal stuff that I'm not going to go into because my district likes to play things close to the vest. And so we're also working on things that hopefully should not impact our families, but will help protect our schools as well.
Holly, let me ask you to kind of give us a little bit more background on the Schools of Hope legislation. I know the original legislation targeted schools that were supposedly failing schools. I think this was in terms of student achievement. Somehow that's sort of shifted to Schools of Hope being focusing on enrollment and falling enrollment. So can you kind of tell us how this current legislation came about?
Sure. So just quickly, Schools of Hope are not new. The underlying statute and litigation, this category, are not brand new. They popped up right around 2018, 2019. But honestly, what I think a lot of legislators were hearing was that the ability to move into certain schools was too narrow for them, essentially, right? That they wanted to have more choice from their end of where to choose to go to and which schools. And so what you've seen since 2018 is sort of a march towards expanding what types of schools these Hope operators. And there's really only a handful right now. There are 6 at the moment, maybe growing soon. So keeping an eye on who are these Hope operators, which groups are considered that. But it's slowly grown, and then over the last couple years, there had been a bill put forth that vastly expanded, right, this definition, not of who is a Hope operator, but which schools they could actually choose, or kind of, for lack of a better word, sort of stake claim to, in a way, to say that this we're going to co-locate into this school, and unless you have really great reasons why not, we're going to do it. And that bill actually died the last couple of years, and it actually died in committee this year as well. And so a lot of folks who are pro-public school, or just, as a public school mom, right, saying, hey, maybe we have another year to look at this and at least have the opportunity in committee to come and take share our voice, have, our very well-meaning and involved legislators and superintendents and school board members being able to have a say. But instead, what we saw was that at the very last moment, literally, in the legislative session, which was a very extended one this year, and it was just on the budget. There was only one thing they were sticking around for, and that was the budget. And so the budget actually has a few documents that go along with it, that they're budget instructions. They're saying this is how you spend this money, and in that, called an implementing bill, is where it kind of was snuck in. And this regulation was snuck in at the last moment, literally at night, and honestly exhausted. When you're talking about legislators, they're like, oh, we just want to go home, sure. And there was mass, I think, confusion about the actual true scope of what this was. Even myself, I have to be honest that until I saw on the news that my child's school was being proposed to close, even as a policy professional, this is my job, I hadn't really went back and read this definition over and over. And you go, wait, this scope seems very large, like every school, very large. So it is a dramatic expansion of a current law, and Schools of Hope have been around, but this would dramatically expand it without a lot of input or engagement from public or even legislators to ask some key questions and school board members. So.
And the legislation, as I understand, is also very broad and rather vague. What are some of the questions that aren't spelled out that the public schools are dealing with? Maybe, Terry, you might want to chime in on this, too, just to
I could say we could spend the whole hour on that, too. Like, I think we could actually go through, like, what about this? What about this? So I'll just really quick, I'll say that it's vastly undefined. So in the legislation, it mentions things like persistently low-performing schools in opportunity zones, which are, high poverty concentrated areas. Those are all things that, great, sounds like we should invest a lot of money in that and should be focusing our time on those children, absolutely, about like what we should be doing. But the way that it's written, it sort of has an and or, okay? And that or like carries a lot of weight, the or of any school district in the state that has an opportunity zone is at risk. Well, guess how many school districts have an opportunity zone? Every one of them, okay? So just put that aside. So we're talking about every school district in the state, and then we're talking about underutilized that has no definition that we can tell. So there's a lot of just lack of definition and vagueness, and that lends to a lot of open questions of just feasibility and accountability.
Yeah, when you look at the rulemaking that resulted, people went to the Board of Education meeting and weighed in on this, and it was almost like it just kind of passed right by them, and they set up these rules that have no clear definition. So if you're looking at a school and it's okay, lower performing, well, no, the schools that we receive letters for in Manatee County are not low performing.
Right.
They're not persistently low performing at all. So, we all have lists of schools that are considered low performing. And so these ones weren't even on our radar as potential opportunities for these schools of hope. We had no idea that these were going to be ones that they requested. And there's so many things. We were talking about, when you have a school that, for example, we all, of course, went through the hurricanes, and we had to relocate kids, right, because schools had too much damage. And if a school has 80% capacity, that means we can move some of those kids over there, right? We can put our kids there, we'll know they'll have a good environment, they can continue to learn until we're able to repair their current school. Well, if you have to have 100% capacity to keep a school of hope out, where are we supposed to put those kids? That was one of the questions that, and I have a notebook up here that people keep emailing me, well, what about this, what about this? And I just keep adding them. I'm like, that's an excellent question, I'll add it to my list. I've got 3 pages in my notebook now of questions that people are asking, and we're like, that's an excellent question.
Yeah.
You're listening to a discussion on the future of our local public education on Talk of the Town, WSLR's News Roundtable. I'm your host, Carrie Seidman, and I'm here with Sarasota School Superintendent Terry Connor, Holly Bullard of the Florida Policy Institute, and Heather Felton of the Manatee County School Board. Let's move to the charter operator that filed all of these applications recently. And by the way, I should say, jump the gun on filing the applications because the actual filing date is this Tuesday, I think is correct. So those applications will have to be refiled starting on Tuesday. The charter operator is called Mater Academy, and apparently, Holly, didn't you say they filed like 150 applications statewide?
Yeah. Over 150 across
Yeah.
the state, yeah.
So Terry, are you fully expecting them to come back with the same applications on Tuesday that they filed previously? And what's your take on what they're trying to do with this kind of blanket applications?
Well, to answer that question directly, hopefully they've been paying attention to Sarasota and they won't file those letters here. But I will tell you, we've had this conversation started back when the legislation passed in late June. And so I brought forward to the communities, and Holly, as a parent of a Wilkinson student, was very much involved in this. Before people realized really what was going on, we were talking about we started with our first 4 most under-enrolled schools in our county and started having a very serious conversation about the potential closure of Wilkinson and then rebalancing those students to help with the utilization of the schools surrounding that also were highly underutilized. And I think there was some skepticism from the community that thought, oh, well, this could happen. And literally the day after I had a board workshop, we received 3 letters that very next day from Mater Academy. Like you said, premature. So, knowing they kind of showed their hand a little early, that created more of an incentive for us to move forward with all of the plans that we have been discussing in different scenarios, right? We've talked about utilization. We've been talking about being competitive and having great programming. So bringing all of that together in a very condensed timeline. And we threw out multiple options. It just wasn't one plan and we shot forward with it. You know, there was a big hubbub about the potential merger of Polytechnical High School with Brookside Middle School because of the campus and actually offering more of what Polytech offers. That didn't go well with the community, especially of those at Suncoast Polytech. But the conversation needed to happen, right? We need to think differently about what we're doing. And how we get there looks a lot of different ways. And where we landed with the Future Focus Initiative is what I call it a shared plan. It really involved multiple community meetings, multiple staff meetings, listened to the constituents. Our board weighed in heavily on this process. And I feel like while we're not necessarily immune from a letter coming on Tuesday, because we still have opportunities there that I believe a Hope operator absolutely could file a letter, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for them either financially or even from a service model to do so in Sarasota based on our plan.
Holly, you were part of the group of families that reacted to the proposal to close Wilkinson. Can you talk a little bit about how your school community galvanized and to your credit were heard by the board and by the administration?
Yeah, for sure. I want to give a lot of kudos to the board and to Superintendent Connor and his team for really listening. I think I hate to put him on the spot, but I've talked to Dr. Kemp so much, who's in his leadership team, and he jokes about scrimmaging, about like that this is going to be better. Just believe me that we're going to go. We need to all come together about this and honestly have some hard conversations. I want to take a point of privilege though, really to share to like parents of students in our district, and that the asset of having our voices heard and leaning in, that I do a lot of advocacy across the state. I do a lot of work in public policy, but if you say that you're going to close my son's school, you just kind of unleash something else. But how do we harness that, right? How do you harness some of that care and love for our public schools in not only in Sarasota, statewide, but Sarasota is such an outlier, right? Like we should be leading the way in this, and I think we are with this plan, which, you cannot. The elation that was, I get goosebumps now of just the elation of these moms. We all just met each other that day when we learned about this, and 8 weeks later to hear like you saved the school that's so important to my son and to like his friends. It just gives me goosebumps now. But think about like the gift that we gave to our community to say, or even the students at Polytech, to be honest, who I also talked to, and as a Wilkinson mom, all of a sudden it started to grow. This is all of us. We're all in this together. Think of like the value that you say, wow, this actually still works. Like I can actually have something input to shape like the future of my community and what that means. And hopefully my son in the future will, will remember like, oh yeah, I remember the moms like getting together and saying we really care about this. So just really want to lean into that and to say, if there are opportunities, if there is something that we can do, honestly, the legislature should be hearing from all of us. There's a delegation meeting on Wednesday. We should just say this whole process, the fact that it forced our hand really quickly, that wasn't really fair to us either. And so we need to address that too. But honestly, again, like kudos to the district. So many meetings, lots of community meetings. I think those are really healthy for us, being out there and in the school, and to have people being able to have a lot of say. But honestly, like there's nothing more powerful than seeing people in person, right? Like actually engaging and doing advocacy together. It's just really powerful in this moment. We're just online, everybody's online and just throwing back and forth, but when you're actually together and having, we have like this community, it's really, really powerful. So if you are a Sarasota County parent or a Manatee County parent or any parent, your voice really, really, really does matter. And so anyway, that's just my own little soapbox, is that if there's a missing piece in this, it's a little bit of actual parent voice and engagement, and student voice too. Like how do you keep that momentum going for our schools? So.
Great message, and I think I hope people take that to heart, because I don't think this battle is over yet, and I think that the community needs to respond loudly and clearly. I'd like to throw this to anyone, because I'm not sure who is best to answer it, but what is the process now? Let's say Mater, refiles these applications on Tuesday, and let's say that they say, I want this school and this school. Who approves it or disapproves it, or how does that work, Terry?
Well, it is very new, and Holly is the policy person on the table, but I can tell you from what I know and the research that our team's done, and I give a shout out to my supervisor of government affairs, who's been on top of this from day one, Chris Parento, who, when we look at this and sit around the table and read the state rule, if they file the letter on Tuesday, there's 20 days to object to that if there is what they call a material impracticality, right? And so that's not defined. Remember, this is a very broad piece of legislation. So we're looking at all the possible definitions for what that means, right? Because it's new to us. But if we deny that particular site, we have to provide an alternative. They don't have to accept that alternative. And then from there would be some sort of a walkthrough that would come and commence with Mater Academy to look at the facility. And we have to provide contiguous space. So you couldn't just say this classroom, this floor, that floor. It'd have to be like a wing or, a set of classrooms. And then we have to share space with them. So not only the classrooms, but all the shared spaces like cafeterias, gymnasiums, all of those protocols we would have to work out.
Parking lots, office space.
Parking lots, office space. We would also have to share, and this is really the issue for me, because, if it was even playing field, I can almost work with that, because I think we offer an excellent product, and I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody. But if I have to use dollars to subsidize the charter school, I have a lot of issues with that particularly, because it's taking the dollars from these students that I'm educating and it's putting them there. And that's what I have the biggest bone of contention there. Not necessarily that co-location is done in other states. I don't know that it's done very effectively. I also have a lot of concerns about the culture and the environment and the day-to-day activities of two schools operating. What if there's different philosophies around safety and security? Whatever, a lot of things there. But we would also have to offer them custodial services and other services on the district's dime. And so that, to me, is not fair competition. And that's where I think we've got to address this moving forward.
And if you look at some of the proposals that they've sent, for example, one of our schools, it's a middle school, but they want to make it a 6 through 12. So are we supposed to have all these big kids wandering around with our middle school kids as well and interacting with them? How do we keep those big kids separate from our sixth graders? These are small people. And so there's that, rivalries that can start up between kids. Well, our school lets us do this, but our school doesn't let us do that. There's so many issues that can arise just from having two very different groups of kids in the same building and trying to share space. And again, as you said, with the funding that, we get $9,000-ish per student from the state. So we're taking that in, we're using it for our services, we have to pay our bills, and then they get their $9,000-ish per child that they don't have to spend on things. Yeah. So they're getting, even though they're supposedly nonprofits, they have the for-profit company that manages them. They pay all this money to that company. So this money that we're giving them to support their students is now getting filtered up to this management company that's for profit. And they don't have to spend the money, but we have to spend ours. There's just law. It's just law. It just irritates me so much. So yeah, it's a mess.
So Holly, that brings up the question for me is like, what is the legality of this legislation? I mean, if we have voted as taxpayers to support our public schools, and that money is going to something that is eventually a for-profit entity, I mean, is this a constitutional legislation? And is there any talk of trying to challenge this? I know the original Schools of Hope legislation, there was some litigation against it in 2017, I think. I don't think it ended successfully, but is there any talk of challenging this?
I would say, even before to answer that, I'd say that if there are communities out there, so let's say, so this is coming up, this is this next week, right? That these letters may or may not happen, maybe more, maybe fewer, maybe different. The threat of litigation is a really good thing to throw out there to try to say, hey, like, these are our schools, this is our taxpayer, we own this. To your point, Sarasota loves our public schools so much that we tax ourselves a lot. I have to say, like, as a public policy professional that works on education and finance for the whole state, like, Sarasota loves our schools so much, and we got the highest, you know, in terms of our margins of success in the general election for this referenda, you know, in a time of...
We did as well.
And very close.
Yeah,
right?
we were at 82-something% in the general election.
Exactly,
for our
which is
referendum.
great, because for that, it shows that when those referenda, because Manatee, it was, that first referenda, it was like, well, we're not quite sure, and then you go, this totally works, right? Like
Yep.
this, and every time you have this referenda, people go, this investment pays dividends, and we see that. And so how is it that those dollars and that support could go to these operators who honestly, you know, there are two very large. When I say that there's Matter Academy that sent the letters, and so we would assume that perhaps there would be other letters sent out. I'm not an elected official, and I don't work for any government. I'm not, so I can say maybe certain things, which is one is that Matter Academy sent over 150 school letters to claim they're not going to do that holistically, right? They only have about 70 schools operating right now, so they're not going to open 150 schools in a couple years. This was really just a message, some sort of staking claim on some of these schools, and just sort of being out of pocket, and to me, it just shows a lack of planning or a lack of honesty to taxpayers, right? Because they're not, who knows, you know, they might not open up, they've sent letters to over 30 ESC schools, so special education schools in the state, that are just completely impractical. So these folks didn't even bother to Google your school.
Impractical, and also don't, Terry, I think you were mentioning that ESC schools are a school like Oak Park, which was one of the schools that they applied for here, which is a special needs school, that there are legalities about them moving a population in.
There's some specific language around how you classify the utilization for ESC special day school. And so that in and of itself will present challenges, because it's not necessarily defined as clearly as a traditional school with their capacity and utilization. So I think they're definitely, you know, to Holly's point, if the Hope operator knows how that school is currently being operated, I would hope that they would think that would be impractical to open up a traditional style school in the middle or alongside of a special day school.
Right, so I could definitely see litigation happening like there could be, in addition to some of this process that's baked into this magistrate process or what have you, but it definitely goes against our underlying constitutional, you know, focus on schools and what that means. But to be honest, there's a lot of things that could be litigated that aren't. So I would encourage, you know, whether it's school districts or we'll see what happens. To be honest, I do think that the more people get very involved, and just to say, like, if you misspelled Brooker Elementary, I don't think you're welcome in Sarasota. I'm sorry, like that's, and I also don't trust you or have confidence in your ability to open up a high quality school in our community, right? And so staying in that space first, and then to really pressure our legislature to say, I don't even know if y'all knew what you were doing here, right? Like let's get back to this and say, how do you explain this and to do what's right? And let's put it back to a focus on children and lifting it so that everyone has a high quality education. And if that was really the whole point of this, is to say, hey, there are schools out there where we need extra assistance and we need an extra help. That is not what is happening right now. And I do want to lift that I've heard this shift, right, in how people are talking, the proponents of this bill are talking about it, from talking about like kids or even like failing schools, or they've kind of left that aside because you're coming into places like Sarasota. Sarasota has 0 persistently low performing schools, even when they expanded that greatly. We still have 0. So the fact that they filed here, it's about school buildings. This is about property, okay?
Absolutely.
And there's a reason why honestly, Matter Academy, the president, whose signature is on every single one of those letters, why he's a real estate lawyer. There's a reason why, like this underlying piece to it. So how we address that at this juncture, I think saying, hey, litigation could be something that communities and honestly, whether it's districts or groups of parents, families who's like, no, this is not for us. But at this moment, it's like, hey, let's do right by our legislature as well, and say, hey, we want to be partnering with you. Honestly, the district partnered with Wilkinson families and other families so well. We came up with a solution that benefited everyone. That every taxpayer in Sarasota, in my mind, should be like, this is pretty good. So why can't we do the same with the legislature, right? That's maybe a question for another day.
Right. I understand that, that there is a year lag, so the earliest they would be able to move in would be August of 26, is that correct?
27.
27, I'm sorry. So Heather, you mentioned that you are already talking to your representatives about maybe putting some guardrails on the legislation or putting more definition into.
Yeah, so we had our delegation meeting a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, obviously, again, I don't speak for the board, so I waited till the end to make my own public comment on my own behalf and behalf of constituents who had talked to me. And you know, I brought to their attention, I said, you know, look, when legislation is set for schools, you always give us some time to prepare and put those things in place, whether it's the Gulf of America thing, whether it is the school start times thing, the safety and security. I mean, we don't have to do it like this, right? They give us time, at least a year, usually, to get those things rolling and to figure out our finances, because of course they don't fund those, right? Those wonderful underfunded or non-funded mandates. You know, I'm like, but here, you gave us 6 weeks. We have 6 weeks notice on this. You know, the legislation was passed, but then when rulemaking came out, it messed it all up even more and opened up everybody to this. And then, you know, that was the end of September, and now November 11th, we can get these letters and they can tell us we got 20 days to respond, and they're moving in a year and a half. Like, what about time to prepare for this? And I told them, as I told you, that, you know, we're rezoning the district. The space is not going to be available that they're looking at.
Yeah.
You know, we are all districts are dealing with our own issues of, you know, possibly closing schools or shifting schools around or building schools. And, you know, we need to be able to complete what we're working on before these schools come in and say, hey, I want that spot over there. You know, so that was one of the things that I personally asked.
I want to make sure that I ask Terry this before we run out of time, because I know many people will be interested in the specifics of this grand plan that you've evolved and that the board voted on yesterday. So can you just kind of give us bullet points of some of the highlights of, you know, for example, I know part of the plan is selling the administrative offices at the landings, but maybe if you can give us the highlights of the plan.
Sure. So again, this conversation started with the 4 most under-enrolled schools, and in its entirety, it was about 10 schools that we were very concerned of when we looked at the utilization and the capacity. And really what it started with is you have to have a collaboration with the Department of Education in this piece. And so because of our proactiveness, we had contacted them very early on to come and look at our current, what they call our FISH reports. FISH is Florida Inventory of Schoolhouses, and that's how we report our capacity. So how many seats is the school built for versus how many actually students are enrolled in that process or in that school. And so I can tell you, until now, as Schools of Hope has created this kind of urgency, there's the accuracy of those reports probably statewide have not been quite what's truly happening in schools, because schools may have taken a room and repurposed it for, let's say, a de-escalation room or some type of lab space. And so it gave us an opportunity to really shore up how are we using our facilities as of today. And so we could create an environment where we had 56 enrolled seats, open seats in those 10 schools, And by going and partnering with the DOE and walking those facilities, because you have to do a spot survey, and letting them know how we use or intend to use over the next few years these classrooms, we can make the updates so that those reports accurately reflect. So how we intend, that's really the plan, right? There are some great things coming as early as August of '26 at the 4 most under-enrolled schools, which is Alta Vista, Brentwood, Gulfgate, and Wilkinson. We are going to be transitioning from pre-K 5 to pre-K 8s. So next year we will roll up the 5th graders to 6th grade, and then the following year 7th, and then 8th the following year after that. So in that 3-year process, that's more students retained. We know that when you look at the data, we tend to lose most of our students at middle school to charters. And so what a great way for them to stay in their neighborhood school, roll up to their 6th grade, stay with the district managed provider, and then stay at that school over the long haul for those 3 more years. So essentially, families want that. They desire to have that as an option and a model. So that the expansion of K-8s is one thing. When we look at our Booker schools, Booker Middle and Emma E. Booker Elementary, they are roughly in the 40% utilization. And honestly, I think some of the facilities was built, it's not that they were full from the start. They built those facilities for purposes. Never were they 100% utilized ever. But now under these conditions, we really have to figure out what we're going to do with that. And so we're going to partner with a great external partner, Junior Achievement. We're doing some work with them. We've already started at the high school level. We're going to be rolling out a workforce competency development initiative at the high school level. But starting in the elementary and middle, we're going to lease space at the middle school and at the elementary school and repurpose those entire buildings into what we call discovery centers. And what it is an experience for students to actually across the county, and we'll even invite Manatee to come over, because I know you probably go to Tampa now. Manatee, our schools come in, DeSoto County, we can make that a field experience where students can get real world simulations in financial literacy. They get a job, they get a paycheck, they learn how to use their money, they get a life scenario, are they married, do they have children? They got to figure all of that out in this real life scenario. So they get that as early as 5th grade, and in the middle school there's another experience that's a little more advanced than that. And then they'll take that learning into high school and really prepare themselves for, to be financially literate. And we're going to reimagine those schools to be more of leadership, entrepreneurship, and business thematic programming there to really give them an excitement about what their futures could really entail for them. They're not going to lose any of their current programming. So we know Booker Middle has got a great VPA program. It's going to continue to flourish and maybe even be enhanced as this goes through. But then we also know in our community, we have a great need for child care before pre-K, like just actual child care. And so we're taking some of the facilities at Booker Middle School. We have a number of classrooms that we're going to repurpose, and we're going to lease to a reputable provider. We haven't decided. We're in conversations with a lot of providers to talk about them leasing that property to provide a North Child Care Center, and down in Heron Creek, where we have some space available, we're going to have a South County facility as well for child care. The goal is that we can provide some significant savings for our employees first. If we prioritize, we give them a good lease deal, they'll in return give us a very good employee discount so that they can take advantage of that as well. And of course the community. So there's that, and then that's a lot already in the plan.
It is a lot, and I'm sure that there are more details to come. I know you're going to be revealing the full plan, I think, very soon, and I assume having some community conversations to let people know.
If you're really interested now, you can go to our website. If you go to the superintendent's page, we have everything outlined with timelines, and so you can know what's happening at your school, or if you're just interested in what's happening at every school, all of that is at our website and currently live.
I think that's awesome, and I think that deserves a round of applause. I've been really impressed and pleased with the degree of transparency and communication with the community. I think it's super important. So
one thing I do want to mention that I forgot, Brookside is going to be reimagined into an innovation and technology academy. So we're going to really focus and partner with the University of South Florida with cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of those new technologies that are really going to take off in the next few years, so our students aren't left behind, right? And so we're really excited about that being our new dedicated magnet for innovation and technology. Yeah.
Just don't forget to teach them how to read and write, because as a journalist, that's very important to me.
It's true, yes.
Yes.
I have a ton of other questions, but I know we're getting short on time, and I want to make sure I get in a couple of the questions that we have from people in the audience here today. So I'm just going to toss these out, and whoever can respond. I love the idea of moving administration offices to the available space in our schools. Please speak to the advantages of being on the ground in the trenches.
Yeah, I'll start with that. So I'm glad I left the conversation with Brookside. I imagine that if we create this Academy of Innovation and Technology, what better department to live on site would be our IT department, right?
Yeah.
To be there, to be hands-on with the students and talk about all the latest and greatest and how the infrastructure is working. So I see a lot of opportunity there. But really, will there still be some centralization? I think, yes, you got to have HR, you have to have business and finance, you have to have the executive team kind of centralized. So where that looks, that's to be seen if we actually move forward with selling that property. But there are other departments that fit naturally. You know, we can find space for, currently we have a school police department. Where could that naturally fit? Out in the field, out in the community, versus having to all be centralized. There was a great intent to bring centralization at one point. I think as technology has advanced, there's more opportunity where if you do decentralize, you can still accomplish the work and still have the availability to bring people together when you need to.
Our next question. While we may have slowed down the Schools of Hope train, are you concerned about further defunding of our public schools through vouchers and ESAs? Heather, you want to take that one?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I have this theory, and I've mentioned it many times, and some of you may have heard it. But if you look at education, kind of like the Skyway Bridge, everything that we get provided by the state are those beautiful yellow supports, right? We all know what that looks like. But as legislation has been coming over the last many years, those yellow supports are being pulled away. But we, being the bridge, keep shooting buses across, getting our kids educated, right? And they keep pulling those away. And the bridge is wobbling right now. But we keep working hard, and they give us more things to do and more things to add to those buses, and they put in roadblocks on the bus or on the bridge, so we're maneuvering around it. But we're still chugging along and doing the best we absolutely can to keep that bridge up. But I feel like that is the long-term goal, is to take out all the supports and just watch it fall down. And that makes me wonder what's going to happen to our kiddos that the charter schools and private schools don't want.
Yeah.
You know, somebody had told me, well, you know, groups will rise up to take those kids. I'm like, no, we're already here.
Yeah.
We're already here to take those kids. We take every single child. We love every single one of them. We support every single one of them and provide them with the best possible education we can with less and less resources every year. But I absolutely believe that the push is to finally knock down that bridge.
We only have time for one more, and I'm sorry, I'm going to reserve it for my question. But those of you who didn't get your questions answered, hopefully our panel will stick around for a few minutes after we finish the radio show and speak with you. I'd like each of you to give one action step that families, community members, taxpayers can take if they feel strongly about defending public education in our community. What is one thing they can do that would be beneficial?
Let's start with contact your legislators. You know, harass the heck out of them, and your voices mean more than ours. So, yeah, that's mine.
I'm going to say, if you're a parent at a school, a public school, join the SAC. So there's the school advisory committee. It's by statute. Every school has one, and meet people like in person. Have a conversation with people. Create a PTO if there's not one. Connect with that, because honestly, a small group of moms, like, you make a huge difference, because that's great, one person, but I'm telling you, a small group of mama bears who were upset, meeting with our legislator, that was pretty impactful too. So it's like this face-to-face stuff. So meet people is the thing, and like in person is important.
Yeah, I think, just being engaged, we are flooded with information, and we're getting information through a variety of sources, whether, most people get it through their phones now. But there's a lot happening, and, just being engaged in the process and really understanding what's going on is really important. And everyone has very busy lives, but when it comes to your kids' education, you should continuing to make that a priority about all of what's happening. From top to bottom, what's happening at the local level all the way up through the state level. And that just comes through, being engaged in the process. And it's difficult. It's difficult because even when we're communicating and sending out messages, there's so many people that are just missing it. They're missing the message. And so we have to continue to repeat it and repeat it. So be engaged.
That's great advice for all of us who care about our public schools. And I have to say, I'm really proud of how our school system and our community have responded to this new legislation, and very hopeful that we'll be able to preserve the great school system that we have. Thanks to good people like these three, and please give them a big round of applause to thank them. Talk of the Town takes place on the second Saturday of each month, and always in front of a live audience here at Fogartyville. But if you can't be with us or you miss a program, you can always access past shows on the WSLR.org website in the archive, by podcast, or on WSLR's YouTube channel. We will next be back December 13th. And our subject will be Governor DeSantis' push to eliminate property taxes and the impact it would have on Sarasota and Manatee. Obviously, something that would involve our schools as well. As is our tradition, before we close, we'd like to ask our guests to contribute their prediction about what the upcoming headlines might be, whether that be factual, fictional, sarcastic, or hopeful. Holly, can we start with you?
Sure. Schools of nope.
Good enough, short and sweet. Heather.
I like that one. I really like that one. Mine is basically along the lines of education in Florida, the model of what not to do.
And Terry.
Sarasota County emerges as the real hope for the future of public
All right. If only we could be the ones writing the headlines, right? Before we close, I just have to take this opportunity to issue an invitation to anyone listening to come to my infamous Thanksgiving open house, which I began as a columnist with the Sarasota Herald Tribune. I started in 2019 inviting anyone who didn't have somewhere to go to come stop by my house for Thanksgiving. It's turned into an annual event. It's super fun. You'll meet a very diverse group of people, and it runs from 3 to 8, so if you have other Thanksgiving plans, maybe you can stop by before or after your other plans. Please write to me at Carrie at WSLR.org, and I will give you the address and the details, and I hope that I'll see you then. Thanks to the Gulf Coast Community Foundation for its support of Talk of the Town, to our staff, to the volunteers, donors, and listeners, and especially to today's panelists. Until next month, this is your Talk of the Town host, Carrie Seidman, saying thanks for listening, and please take care of each other and carry on.
Carrie, we've published a ton on the property tax stuff.
Well, thank
So,
you all for being here for Talk of the Town.
That's like our whole, that's our
on this
major
beautiful
focus
Saturday
of ours,
morning. We
so.
hope you all
At
have a great
FBI,
time
we
and
have, like,
appreciate you being part of the WSLR live broadcast. Hope you all enjoyed. Go check out Taste of